This is Kevin Conroy, and I am the goddamn Batman.
You have just jumped inside the Pull Bag, only on the Geekcast Radio Network. I'm the Joker, baby, and I'll be your narrator for the evening.
A rank amateur.
What we have here is a list or countdown episode of the podcast where TFG1 Mike and Ryan the UnEvenFlow Merkley. What? Where do these people get these names? Crazy talk, and they think I'm the one with a goofy name. Anyhow, they'll be giving us their personal top 10 favorite Batman characters. What? Huh? I better be on this list, and not at number 10 either. There'll be hell to pay! Make your great escape into comics, and jump inside the Pull Bag. Right now! To hear where some Batman characters rank in the host's personal favorites list.
Ooh. Technical difficulties. Let's move on, shall we?
Hello and welcome to The Pull Bag. This is episode 354. This is a first, folks. We are doing a top 10 list of characters in comics. Mainly in comics. This is all about Batman. This is the conclusion to Batman Month this year inside the Pull Bag for 2019. I am, of course, TFG and Mike. Joining me is Ryan, the UnEvenFlow Merkley. Hello, sir.
You should have just pretended it's live. Just like make random noises. Also, don't edit the podcast. That's the easiest way to pretend it was live.
Very true.
Just do no editing.
People don't really notice, I don't think, anymore, because half the time I cut the beginning off of whatever 2-hour discussion we've had beforehand, and I cut whatever little ending off is, and half the time I don't even go through the podcasts anymore, any of them. As long as there's no fuck-ups or flubs or, Skype, cutting out or anything like that.
Or your usual ethnic slurs.
When did I... wait a minute.
When did you not?
What are you talking about?
Oh, jeez.
I had brain surgery. I don't remember this stuff.
That's very selective editing. Jeez.
So I've been wanting to do this for a while on the show. I've been wanting to do like a list episode kind of thing, and I figure, Batman characters. We can all come up with a Batman characters list. This may actually end up being something bigger later down the line for the Pull Bag. I might actually reach out to, the listeners and get everyone's personal top 10 favorite Batman characters list. The only really caveat I put on this is the characters have to come from the comics.
And then you said you sort of cheated, which is
well,
correct.
I sort of cheated because I'm the host and I can do whatever the hell I want, and it's a personal list. But generally, Batman is from comics. So if I choose to put in Kevin Conroy from Batman the Animated Series in the DC Animated Universe, I can do that.
Kevin Conroy is not a character in the comics. What are you talking about?
You know what I mean. Basically, the only ones that really kind of are outside of having to have come from comics is all Harley Quinn and obviously the Batman Beyond characters that are in comics now, because obviously they came from an animated series and then transitioned into comics.
Yeah, and I think you could make an argument for others too. Like Mr. Freeze was a joke character.
Right,
before
and then
Batman the Animated Series. He bears no resemblance to the versions you see now or the version from Batman the Animated Series. And there have been others. I mean, the Clock King was completely different in animated series as well, although I'm not sure too many people are clamoring for him, but hey. I'm just saying that he's different. And
Clock King and Calendar Man and Condiment King and...
Calendar Man's from the comics,
right,
and used to surprising effect. I debated throwing him on late, so this is tough because it's for me, it was pretty easy to do the top sort of favorite characters.
Mm-hmm.
I already know yours is number one is going to be Dick Grayson. You can just get that out of the way now.
Actually, no, you don't know that.
Well, that's surprising. So, in any case, though, it's harder to do the bottom just because you got to leave somebody off. Or in this case, you're leaving hundreds of characters off.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, 80 years of Batman, millions of different characters, even if they're just like Dr. Leslie Tompkins or, Vicky Vale or, that kind of thing. Not saying Vicky Vale, obviously, yada, 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 but...
I hope Tompkins isn't your number 10, because that's going to clash big time with mine.
No, I don't... I mean, the only way...
She murdered my number 10 pick.
Oh, boy. Alrighty then, so, kicking off the countdown, what is your number 10 character for top...
The character Dr. Tompkins murdered, Stephanie Brown.
Oh, God.
So, like I said before, this was tough for me. Well, Tompkins supposedly let her die to teach Bruce a lesson. That was not a good arc. Anyway, I included Brown here partially because I forgot how much fun she could be. She didn't get a fair shake, especially in her original major sort of arc in the War series. War Games, War Drums, etc., etc. But she was interesting, and she was something different that it had been a long time since we had seen a Robin with the same sort of sense of fun. Keeping in mind this is sort of post or in the same era as Identity Crisis, which, quote, done Robin dirty, unquote, as one might say. No, it was not a good... That's one that wasn't a great arc for Tim Drake, who may show up later, but... Stephanie really didn't get a fair shake, and she was a fun character in the arc we read, and it kind of sets her apart from... So I did the list at the start because I think it's easy to come up with your absolute favorites. I think it's harder as you go down. She has a sense of fun that none of the other characters on my list had, and I thought more and more about it.
Yeah, her sense of fun comes from the fact that, okay, she was spoiler before being, taking over Cassandra Cain's Batgirl kind of thing, and she's not a Dick Grayson, she's not a Tim Drake, she's not even a Damian Wayne type. Like, she has no real connection to Bruce Wayne, Dick Grayson, whatever, considering at least at the point of the arc that we read, at least the first part of the arc that we read, Dick Grayson was Batman at that time. Bruce is, got broken backed by Bane kind of a thing. So, I mean, Stephanie is one of those characters who I would have actually put at my number 9, but I didn't. It's just one of those types of characters that it's a refreshing look into the Bat
I like her because she's different.
Yeah,
and she doesn't have the Yeah, I'm not really spoiling anything. Most of the characters I have for the remainder, surprise, surprise, are all characters that have decades of backstory and, to be blunt, have just had a lot of stuff happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's not as weighed down by that. So it's understandable that she's got kind of a wide-eyed enthusiasm that, can be naive and have naivety to it, but it's just kind of and we talked about this a little bit in the reviews of the Batman series, and now we got news that Tom King's
not
finishing his arc, which by the way is a load of bullshit. But all I'll say is even if you don't like an arc, I think the writer should be allowed to finish it the way they wanted to, especially since you can't always see where it's going. And I think I mentioned this, and I don't want to get into it, let's not make this a long segue, but I haven't been enjoying Heroes in Crisis, but I want to see where he goes with it. I think sometimes the ending can save it, or vice versa, as we saw with other things in the last few weeks. The ending can say, a bad last season and a half can do some real damage. But no, I want to see him finish it, and it sucks that he won't get the chance to, because he deserved that. He's more than a good enough writer, to put it mildly.
Yeah, I don't understand. So for those that aren't in the know, Tom King has been quote-unquote removed from the Batman ongoing. What is it?
At 85.
At 85 issues. What is the last arc? City of Bane or War of Bane or whatever the hell it's called. I forget. It's something to do with Bane. His plans were to have 100 issues, and apparently DC's like, yoink, nope, not gonna happen, or whatever.
And nobody said exactly why, by the way. That should be noted.
It has not been.
People have hinted at sales. People have hinted at a bunch of things.
Yeah.
And the sales thing, by the way, is ridiculous because the comics industry keeps making more and more money. But anyway.
Exactly. So he's going to be moving to a 12-issue Batman Catwoman series or something like that. And I've seen the art for it, and I when I saw the news story, I'm like, okay, I'm okay with this. At least he's still writing the character. He's not getting to finish the story that he wanted to do, but at least he's not completely fired from the company or whatever. I don't know. My number 10 is everybody's favorite character. Everybody's favorite character from the outside in.
Kite Man.
No. It's none other than Batmite.
Oh, Jesus.
So I read I think it was it JT and I forget who did it with me. I read the 6-issue miniseries that Dan Jurgens and Corin Howell did, Batmite, way back when, a couple years ago. I love Batmite. He's just one of those characters in Batman's universe that just wants that. He's basically a diehard fan that wants the true version of Batman that he knows, that he loves, and he's basically a true internet fanboy. Anything that doesn't incorporate what he loves, he hates it. I think just based on that 6-issue miniseries by Dan Jurgens, that what I loved about that is he basically, took Damian to task, which anyone that can take Damian to task is more than okay with me. I just love how funny he is, and he was the single best part, and I have to go back and watch more of the show. For me, his episodes in Batman the Brave and the Bold were the single funniest things I have seen in that entire series, outside of Aquaman and his outrageousness.
What's this do?
That's not helping.
Anyway.
Anyway.
All right.
Number 9 for you.
This is another tough one, but I've never been... And this is funny. So there's a couple on this list, and we talk about it all the time. I love Batman the Animated Series. You love it. Mm-hmm. This is one of the few that I definitely prefer the comic version of. And my number 9 is Selina Kyle, a.k.a. Catwoman. Mm-hmm. And I could go on for hours about her history and everything else. I enjoyed her in the more recent times, especially. And I'm sort of frustrated that they immediately tried to undo it. But, for example, in Hush, where Bruce finally confided in his secret identity, mm-hmm. i.e. I'm Batman, I liked that. And I liked the idea of her knowing and being somebody who's not necessarily a friend, not necessarily a villain, knowing who he is. I always enjoyed that. And I've always enjoyed the interplay between the two. It didn't happen, of course, but I wasn't a huge fan of her marrying Bruce.
Yeah. I mean...
But...
I have not read that arc yet, but obviously because of the way the internet is and how the news is, and, obviously it's spoiled. And I don't care about spoilers like that.
But she was my number 10. Oh, sorry, wrong one.
Number 9, actually.
No, I was saying spoilers was
stop.
my number 10.
Stop.
Well, I get it, Stefan. Anyway.
Yeah,
so,
I got it.
No, I mean, and there's obvious other reasons, but I always liked the interplay between her and Batman.
Yeah. It's always so fun. It has us. Go ahead.
No, it's got the hint of sexual tension. It's got a hint of subtlety and all these other things. I just always liked the character. I was never that impressed with her depiction in the animated series. I don't know what it is. It just didn't necessarily work for me. Although part of it was some of the episodes with her were not some of the better episodes of the show.
Yeah.
The two-part Tiger, for example. Oh, boy.
No, Tiger was not two-part. That was Cat in the Claw.
Damn it.
Tiger was one episode.
Which was the...
Cat in the Claw
no, I'm thinking
was...
That was it, yeah. Wasn't big on that. Wasn't big on Tiger. Anyway.
Yeah, Tiger and Mount Olympus are two of the single worst Batman the Animated Series episodes. Anyway.
Yeah, and no offense to Batman the Animated Series, which overall is still awesome. Go buy it on Blu-ray. Anyway.
Exactly. Number 9 for me is that joke character, which thankfully Paul Dini turned into, a seriously tragic character, Victor Freeze.
Ooh.
I love Mr. Freeze now after Batman the Animated Series.
I do too, but I decided when I was doing this list that because of it really was the animated series that made him. So I ended up leaving him off just because to me he was too synonymous with the animated series. But yeah, anyway, continue.
They've done a couple of cool things with him, like when they were doing the DC Villains Month a couple of years ago. They had this, Mr. Freeze issue kind of thing, and I thought that was a cool story. You're right. I mean, it is mainly the animated series. It's a sad thing what they ended up doing to him throughout the DC animated universe. They turned him into just a head. They turned him into a head with a spider on it as a body. And obviously they ultimately paid true homage to him in Batman Beyond by basically,
they buried him / never to appear again.
True, but at least he got a better ending than having just a head. I mean...
No, and I liked that, in the end he was semi-heroic. I mean, he was still trying to fight Terry while fighting with Blight, but in the end, he kind of went good. He tried to, anyway.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that was kind of his story, that he was always trying to be a better person. You're talking about the comics. So when the new 52 was established and they brought him back, he still had sort of the tragic backstory, but the story had become that Nora rejected him.
Yeah.
Which I'm not as big a fan of that. I like him more as the tragic character when he becomes kind of the, toxic guy who can't take no for an answer. Not sure I liked it as much. I don't know. Obviously, it's going to be different for different people. I know somebody who read that version of Freeze and loved that they kind of turned the animated series origin on its head.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It was never for me. I'm also weird, though, so... I like my psychopaths with skulls on their chest, damn it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sure we could do a whole list on Punisher characters.
I mean, most of them are dead if it's a villain, so... He doesn't have recurring villains much.
That's true. So, there goes that idea.
Speaking of recurring villains...
Yes.
Unless you had anything else you wanted to say about Freeze.
No, I just, like I said, I hope that someone gets a chance to use him in the future. Not necessarily using the exact same type of origin from animated series, but obviously use that as the backbone and then create a crafty story from there. So number 8 for you is...
I said the ultimate character who doesn't seem to pass on. Ra's al Ghul himself.
Oh.
The demon.
Mm-hmm.
I liked Ra's, and he was a little more environmental in a lot of the comic books, and I've always liked the character. His use in the Tower of Babel storyline, which you would know roughly from Justice League Doom, the animated picture.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But in the comics, it was Ra's who stole Batman's plans on neutralizing the Justice League and then enacted them to great efficiency. But all of his things were done with, Ra's at least had some. He wanted to preserve the planet, preserve nature. He thought humans were kind of trashing the place, which hard to argue with them nowadays. Anyway, but I always liked him, and the Lazarus Pits have become, yes, they're a bit of a trope, but they've been one of the most important because of that, and because of the character. I mean, he did best the Justice League for a while, but a lot of it's because of the Lazarus Pits and the resurrection power, et cetera, et cetera. He's become one of the most important elements of the DC universe, period, because, man, his stuff gets used a lot.
Yeah, it does.
Everybody and their brother seem to get those damn Lazarus Pits at some point.
Yep. Even Stephen Amell and Arrow and, all that.
You're creeping me out. You? She kissed me.
Yeah, I like Ra's. I don't, other than, like I mentioned earlier about the Villains Month thing that the New 52 did a couple years ago, I don't really know. Like, again, my knowledge comes from animated series. My knowledge comes from, David Warner as the voice of Ra's. And what was done in that series, oh, man.
I liked him a lot in that series as well, too.
I did, too. But
obviously, as a Star Trek fan, I adore David Warner.
Absolutely. What they did in that series with Batman Beyond and that's like the creepiest thing Ra's ever did. Was basically put his own brain in his daughter's body. Oh, creepy. All right. My number 8 is Selena Kyle, Catwoman.
Never heard of her. No.
It's always about the bat, the cat, and sadly not the penguin. Obviously, Julie Newmar, Eartha Kitt, and Lee Merriweather were the 3 original actresses that played her in Batman 66. Adrienne Barbeau was the voice of her in Batman the Animated Series and the rest of the DCAU. I'm actually stoked to eventually read the wedding thing that King came up with, even though I obviously know it never actually happened. But like you were saying earlier, there's just a hint of sexuality between them. There's just overtones of various things. And it's also various subtle things as well, like will they, won't they, will they, won't they. And sadly, at least in King's Run, they won't. And she's just a cool character to kind of not necessarily try to tame, but try to see if Batman can, calm her criminal ways every now and then.
She's another enjoyable one, too, from the series we were talking about before the show started. She's another one I enjoy in the 2 Loeb efforts.
Yeah.
Long Halloween and then Dark Victory. You love Dark Victory since, origin of Dick Grayson.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Absolutely. All right, number 7 for you is
a Robin.
Which one?
Not the one you're thinking of, though. I have the current Red Robin at 7. I always liked Tim Drake. And the concept of somebody who it's one thing to have a lot of characters that go toe-to-toe with Bruce Wayne and Batman in physicality, but the way that Tim Drake did things, so when he was introduced, one of the first things he did was figure out that Bruce Wayne is obviously Batman.
Right, yep.
And that's a solid way to quickly introduce your character as someone who's roughly his equal. And in the intervening years, I've always liked him when he got to step out into his own and be Red Robin and solve mysteries on his own. Bruce always trained him to be his replacement, at least from the brain side of things when he passed on or when he disappeared or whatever. But I like that he's been allowed to, and he's become his own character now, and he's somebody different who doesn't necessarily need to be. He's not the protege in the same way that Dick Grayson was, and so it makes more sense for him to be his own character, to solve mysteries on his own, that sort of thing. So I don't know. I always really liked the character and enjoyed him.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. He's one of those characters that, he couldn't have been a Dick Grayson because, Dick Grayson didn't find out who Batman was immediately. Like, Tim Drake comes on the scene, pretty much, finds out, Bruce Wayne is Batman, and then, Bob's your uncle, there you go. Okay, so I'm going to ask you this now, because I'll end up forgetting about it later. Outside of, like, the Teen Titans New 52 stuff, were there any separate Red Robin books? Were there anything where it was just him on his own? Like, I remember certain parts of the Scott Snyder run kind of had him, like in some of those big crossover things, kind of had him doing stuff, but I haven't really seen, like, Red Robin get his own series.
He's had some, but it hasn't had the same. So he's another guy that his influence on the DC universe changed pretty drastically when New 52 started. And he was another guy that I kind of lamented he didn't have the same stature, especially, again, going back to what we were talking about with Stephanie Brown and Dick Grayson as Batman. He really kind of got to step up at that point for a while, mostly because Bruce is gone, and it's up to his proteges who he's trained for this to actually do it. And I liked the idea of, in a lot of cases, when they were trying to establish Batman Inc. and when they were trying to have more heroes involved, Dick would actually defer to Tim and have Tim train them, in some cases, in the mental aspect of it. And it was fun to see those differences. And then ever since then, so when New 52 started, he was pretty much Red Robin right away. And just, I don't know. I know, so he's had story arcs and had books, but I don't know of any major ones. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see someone, I don't care who it is, I would like to see someone take the Tim Drake Red Robin character and do, not necessarily this, but do something along the lines of what Kyle Higgins did with Nightwing The New Order, where it's like this futuristic, like, I want to see a sole Tim Drake Red Robin story kind of thing. Like, I was completely shocked and surprised that he showed up in Stephanie Brown Batgirl. I thought it was absolutely cool. I didn't dislike it at all. I loved it. But, because I hadn't read the Stephanie Brown character before, I didn't know that they had dated at one point or another. So, all right. My number 7 is I'll give a penny for your worth, because it's none other than Batman's butler, his surrogate father, Alfred Pennyworth. How can you do a Batman character list and not have Alfred on here somewhere? I mean,
I almost accidentally tried to, but anyway, he.
I probably should have him higher, but
in every way. I did, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. I probably should have had him higher, but I don't know. Like, yes, obviously, very quintessential character in all mediums. Every time I see Alfred in the comics now, whether it's New 52, whether it's Rebirth, whatever, I think of multiple things, but the first voice that pops into my head when I'm reading lines from Alfred is easily Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. from the animated series. Every now and then, oh God, what was his name? Alan something, the 66 Alfred.
Yeah.
Oh God, what's that? God, people are screaming at their listening devices. Anyway, but every time I see Alfred with Bruce or with any of the Bat family, I just love how he's a father to them all. Obviously to Bruce first, but, he takes care of all of them. And without Alfred, there would be none of this. Or if he wasn't there, or if he died, or whatever, things would drastically be different.
I like, there have been different versions of him, which I think is fun too. So, for example, the Earth 1 Alfred, where he was a former soldier, and he's a bit more kind of ass-kicky, quote-unquote, than, I've come up with a new word, anyway, than the other versions, because they made him a little younger. So there's that. There's really the same version as the animated series. I don't think he's changed all that much, where in the comics, where yes, he's Bruce's father figure, but he's not above the occasional, I don't know how to describe it. It almost seems like it's a quip. It's a half insult, half hilarious comment, but in the end he means well about Bruce. And he makes them a lot on the animated series. And he makes them in, we mentioned it before, in both King and Snyder's runs. And just, I don't know, that's the version of him. He's a caring father, but he's not above, he's one of the few that's not afraid to tell Bruce Wayne or Batman, you're wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It puts
him in a different place than a lot of the others we have in the list. Sorry.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, technically Alfred should be on the list all his own at number 1, because if you think about it, he's made suits for all these people. He's helped Bruce with everything, obviously raising him as a child from when his parents got murdered by Joe Chill, all of that, he's the one that Bruce Wayne always turns to when he needs certain fatherly advice, because that's the only father he's ever really known, past when obviously his own father died. The sad thing about my list, I'm fairly sure, I think we know each other fairly well enough now that I don't think either one of us have the Waynes on our list. Thomas and Martha.
Not the family, no.
Yeah, I was fairly certain that neither one of us would, because honestly, like, outside of them dying, and outside of, like, Thomas Wayne, Batman, that alternate whatever it was thing, whatever that is, like, have there really ever been stories with Thomas and Martha? I don't think so, because again, like we said a couple episodes ago, or whenever it was, that, there are usually 3 characters in comics histories, Uncle Ben, Thomas and Martha Wayne, they stay dead.
Yeah, and I don't know, they really didn't do much. They turned them on their head a bit in Hush. Being an important part of that story, but not for the usual reasons, or the reasons you'd think. So
yeah,
but yeah, not really.
Not really. Yeah,
Alfred's the closest to family he gets.
Yep. I mean, there was that whole, was it in Snyder's run or something, or where was that? There was the whole thing about his brother Thomas Wayne or something or other, about Bruce's having a brother or something. I don't remember where it was from.
You may be thinking of Thomas Elliot, who was Hush, but
okay,
who was basically his brother. Although, yeah, he was depicted to be his brother in some.
It was some other thing recently within the last 6 or 7 years. Anyway.
Oh my God.
Master Bruce, Miss Gordon, I see you've discovered our little secret. Yes, I admit it. I am Batman.
All right, number 6 for you, sir, is...
Oh, boy. So this is going to be a lot lower than most people probably have this character, but it's my list of my favorite characters, and we're talking comics. I have never been half as big a fan of the comics version of the Joker as other versions. Mark Hamill.
Houston, we have a problem.
Or Jack Nicholson.
Gotham City always brings a smile to my face. Winged freak terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me.
Or Heath Ledger.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
Basically, and Cesar Romero. Actually, everybody except for Jared Leto. So anyway.
That cursed utility belt again. I swear by all that's funny, I shall never be foiled by that insidious, unconstitutional device again. Where's Bruce Wayne?
Mr. Wayne is not at home, sir.
Too bad. I'll get my revenge later. Right now I'll settle for cash. Where's the safe?
My duties do not include aiding and abetting thievery.
Oh, no?
See. This way, sir. Please be calm, madam.
One peep out of you, now blow your head off. Where's the safe?
Over there.
My, you poor little thing.
Behind the picture, sir.
There's no safe there.
Alfred, be careful. The Joker's an arch criminal.
I know, madam, but a very poor fencer.
You Anglo-freak, I'll smash you to smithereens.
May I point out that Smiggins is a childish confusion should have no place even in so poor a vocabulary as yours.
Stand back, I say, or I'll... Ah, what's this? Don't touch that. Ah, a secret passage.
Alfred, what's happened? I'm afraid the Joker accidentally tripped the Batpost switch and mistook this for a secret passage, sir.
Then he's down in the Batcave.
He didn't quite make the Batcave, Master Robin.
Then where is he?
I believe he should be arriving presently.
Emergency Batpole elevator. Fast thinking, Alfred.
Thank you, sir.
Someone get me off this crazy dumbwaiter! I can't breathe!
Joker says he can't breathe, Alfred. Why don't you give him some breathing space?
With pleasure, sir.
Lucky you didn't get around to washing our other costumes, Alfred, or else Joker might have found himself wearing a bat costume.
I think we better see about baby Jane Towser. Alfred, it looks like you can handle things here.
I believe everything's well in hand, sir, and the young lady's in the living room.
Alfred, old pal, have pity!
We Anglo-finks have a long memory. Shouldn't take pleasure in another creature's misfortunes, but occasionally one may be forgiven for a slight twinge of satisfaction.
God, I hate that version of him. I don't even care that it's not like... The other ones aren't all that much... I'm getting off topic, but I don't care. The other ones aren't all that much like the comics. Like, especially Heath Ledger. That was not anywhere close to most comic versions of the Joker, but it was fantastic. Jared Leto's is just a shitty character. Anyway, so yeah, I have the Joker at 6. I don't think I need to say much about his resume, about why he should be on the list.
Oh, absolutely.
All I'll point out is why I've got him where he is, I guess. And he's overused, and that's part of the problem with another of these characters when I go on. But Joker's kind of overused. Some of his appearances have pointed out some of the problems with Bruce Wayne's "don't kill anybody" rule. Mm-hmm. I really think there is a good discussion to be had, and I talk about it with people in real life all the time. At what point are the murders the Joker commits Batman's fault?
Yeah, they're not.
Realistically, he should just kill him.
Exactly.
The other issue I have with the Joker in the comics is there's not a lot of great reasons why somebody hasn't just offed the guy. He doesn't work in other books all that well. He's not imposing. He's extremely intelligent, but he's not necessarily Machiavellian intelligence. And if he had other, he works in the DC universe because everybody has this weird "we can't kill anybody" rule. Mm-hmm. But then you look at the Avengers, whose rule is
kill everybody.
We try sometimes not to kill people. At it, so whatever. Every once in a while, you got to kill somebody. For example, and I think he'd last half an issue against Hawkeye, much less Thor or something. And the DC universe is filled with characters who are in just gods in terms of power. So stuff like that always kind of bugged me in the comic books. He works as a Batman villain, though. I'm not listing all the amazing qualities he has. I was just trying to say why I've got him kind of lower. Yeah. I just don't find him as interesting in the comics, I guess, as he's been depicted on screen.
Yeah, that's very true. And I'll speak about that in a minute. Number 6 for me is the Judge. I'm sorry, Harvey Dent. I'm sorry, Two-Face. And I mentioned the Judge only because of, obviously, Batman the Animated Series and the third personality that came out in Harvey Dent. Two-Face in the comics that I've read hasn't been as good as, again, like you mentioned, the animated series or the animated stuff.
Boy, do I have some comics for you to read.
I'm sure, and that's great, and I absolutely will read them. I'm not sure. I like Two-Face as a character. I think he has a cool gimmick. The sad thing with Two-Face is he's very, very predictable. Even so far back as Batman 66, on the second day of the second month, the 2nd Street Bank is going to be robbed for $2 million by Two-Face. That's so predictable. I don't know. The reason why I like the character is because it is a focus on multiple personalities, and he always has to be left up to a choice, and he has to make a choice, which is not necessarily saying I'm Two-Face, but I'm one of those people, one of those rare people that I make choices and I stick with it. Like when I was a kid, I had a choice between watching Transformers Generation 1 or G.I. Joe. I didn't want to watch both. I wanted to watch one or the other, so I picked Transformers. Do I still enjoy the G.I. Joe animated series? Absolutely. No. I just didn't watch it on the regular as a kid. That's just one of those things. So, yeah, Two-Face is number 6 for me. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to... whatever. Let's just say we might be talking about him later. Again.
Okay.
All right, my number 5, though, has not appeared anywhere. And I'm so tempted to list him higher, but he's another character who has never really... So he's one of the few that hasn't, to me, been depicted nearly as well as he has been in the comics. Although part of that is he got one hell of an intro in the comics, because when you show up and you break the back of the main protagonist, that's a pretty good hello. So,
yeah. So your number 5 is Bane.
Yeah, my number 5 is Bane. And I adored his introduction. He's shown to be every much the strategist just as Batman and a match for him physically. I really liked that, and it's almost sad that until recently he hasn't necessarily ever lived up to that introduction, but his intro is still something I don't think anybody will ever forget. And he had a lot of great cameo stuff as well in No Man's Land and some other stories. But yeah, always loved him. To me, if we're talking about his screen stuff,
we really should.
Although I do love Tom Hardy's Bane, but for me, my favorite Bane moment on the screen comes from Over the Edge, where he kills Batman and Commissioner Gordon. Yes, it was in a dream, but it's still awesome.
Yeah,
he finally came off as a badass in one of the animated shows, and that made me happy. But anyway, I always liked the comic character. His intro was phenomenal. It's, like I said before, it's kind of sad that his good appearances after that are spotty, but he's an interesting character, and I like when they depict him or when he's written as more than just a set of muscle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like what was the one? I know no one's really gonna like this because I don't know. The movie was a little strange, but Mystery of the Batwoman. He had a fairly decent role in that.
Yeah.
He was, fairly, not saying he isn't intelligent, but in that specific film, animated film, he was very, very intelligent in that. Like you said, Over the Edge, I mean,
Great episode of the show, too, which helps.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. My number 5 is none other than Barbara Gordon, Batgirl. Commissioner's daughter turned superhero.
He could have said Michael too. I mean, she's had so much to do.
Right. Well, I mean, Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, absolutely, and that was going to be part of my pitch. Like, she's been so much. She's been so much in Bruce's life. She's been so much in Dick Grayson's life. Obviously, getting shot by the Joker and being paralyzed and being in a wheelchair and turning herself into Oracle and all of that. Like we said. Last week or a couple weeks ago with Stephanie Brown, becoming a mentor to Stephanie Brown, Batgirl. I wish that, and I have not read any of the Rebirth Batgirl stuff yet. I want to eventually, but right now for me in comics, outside of Stephanie Brown, the Barbara Gordon Batgirl that I love is Gail Simone's Batgirl.
Yes, excellent series.
She did that. Oh, I wish that would have never ended. I absolutely love that more adult tone. And hey, I've actually interviewed Batgirl's psychologist. So, for those that don't know, Gail Simone wrote Dr. Andrea Letamendi into the Batgirl New 52 series. And I've interviewed her along with her husband, Brian Ward, from Shout Factory, before on the podcast network here. So, I love what Gail did with the character. I love the twists and turns that she took with Barbara, putting her in through so many different things. And, Barbara as herself and as Batgirl is just a super interesting character to me.
Barbara was one of the ones I tried real hard not to include multiple people
Batgirls
who played the same character. Yeah. Both her and Cassandra Cain, I absolutely adore, though, and were difficult for me to not put on the list, especially Barbara, who's worn, different hats as Oracle, as being Commissioner Gordon's daughter, and as Batgirl. She's multiple characters at the same time, and they're all great.
Yep, absolutely.
I don't have a great reason for leaving her off. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Who is your number 4 favorite Batman character, sir?
So, as mentioned earlier, at 4 I had Alfred. I love him. He's a great character. He is every bit Bruce Wayne, Batman's equal, and he's one of the few characters that gets to treat him that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, he's just fun. He's fun. He can be a mentor. He can offer sage advice. He can kind of do it all. And yeah,
he can quip like Spider-Man.
Yeah, he really can. I mean, he gets to do whatever. So,
I mean, say what you want about the film. Partners. Alfred, we're going to need a bigger cave. I don't care what anyone says about Batman and Robin from 1997, but Michael Gough as Alfred in those original Batman movies was amazing.
Yeah, he was fantastic. And when you mentioned too when you mentioned that you hear Ephraim Zimbalist Jr.,
mm-hmm.
I'd include him as well. Ephraim Zimbalist is still my favorite, I guess you could say, voice for Alfred.
Mm-hmm. But Michael Gough was damn
Michael
good.
Gough was fantastic. And
yeah,
easily, for me, the best part of the later films. I know it's not saying a lot.
Yep.
But he was perfectly done. I enjoyed him in... we're getting off topic because this isn't the comics, but I enjoyed him, for example, in Batman, where he flat out lets Vicky into the Batcave at one point, and
mm-hmm.
and just I don't know. Like I say, he's very much an equal, and he knows. Sometimes he knows what Bruce/Bats needs before they do.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, and outside of Michael Gough's performance in the films, my favorite thing, Alan Napier was the 66 Alfred. My favorite thing he ever did was the Diet Coke commercial from '89. Oh, it'll be in here somewhere, folks. It might even be right here.
Hello. Gotham Corner Store? Yes, we seem to be down to our last Diet Coke. A gentleman is on his way to pick some up. Just look for a black car. No, this black car will be rather difficult to miss. And by the way, the gentleman is usually in quite a rush. Just for the taste of it, Diet Coke.
But why did the actor who played Batman in those never get to be Batman? He had the look, I tell you. Anyway.
Yep, he had the look, all right. Alrighty then. So my number 4 is a reversal of your earlier pick. It's the Joker. And obviously I can't do the Joker's voice as well as Steve Megatron can, or obviously
when you
Mark
said
Hamill.
already then, I thought you were going to name the Riddler.
That would have been ironic.
Carrey, but anyway.
Yep. Alrighty then. Yeah, no. The Joker to me in the comics, he's good, but he's better in live action and animation.
He's still iconic, and he's got
he's very
moments
iconic, yeah, and he has iconic moments.
But there's something missing from maybe it's not fair to compare them because it's completely different mediums, but I always just feel like there's something missing from the comics version, and I'm never sure exactly what that is.
Yeah. I'll say this. We just did this month, we did Endgame from Scott Snyder. Before, Steve Megatron and I, at the very beginning of the podcast back, 6 years ago, the whole reason why the pull bag is even here is because he had me read Batman 13, which was the beginning of Death of the Family in the New 52. Death of the Family and Endgame are perfect flip coins of each other. Where in Death of the Family, he wants to be Batman's best friend and confidant and comrade and, hey, we're almost alike, Batsy, kind of thing. Whereas Endgame, he's like, you're my enemy again,
It's more, more profound disappointment is what I think I said on the podcast, and that's
yeah,
no, that's what it felt like to me. But yeah,
and honestly, I can't think. I mean, you mentioned all the actors earlier: Mark Hamill, Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger, Cesar Romero. Even some of the other players that have played him, like Kevin Michael Richardson in the Batman, did a decent job with Joker.
We talked.
Go ahead.
But after the show, that it feels like, in terms of voice acting, especially, he just always gets really good voice actors and performances. Like, even I remember when he was cast, how annoyed I was, or how I thought, oh, John DiMaggio can't do a good Batman. I thought work, and then it was really good. He wasn't my favorite, but it was still really well done.
What Mark Hamill did and what Bruce Timm and his crew did with the Joker throughout the entire DC animated universe is by far my favorite version of the character in animation, because I mean, the lines the Joker has in anything of the, like, even in the stuff with Justice League, like, perfect.
Everything from getting popcorn to watch the Watchtower explode with
Batman,
with a restrained Batman.
Yep, and it's just so, like, I would love to be a fly on the wall in the room of Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill just being those characters and just going back and forth. The lines that the Joker has had throughout the animated series, throughout the rest of the DC, like, there's a line in Wild Cards in Justice League where he's like, "Ooh, all that lovey-dovey stuff, we don't want that on this show," kind of a thing. Like, and the music that Shirley Walker and the people at Warner, specifically Shirley Walker, because she was, the queen of the musical composition, the themes that they made for the Joker, I love them. I just absolutely love them.
All right, that's it.
Cool.
We need to just do an animated series podcast or something, because that's what this keeps turning into. Anyway,
I know. Number 3 for you, sir.
Hey, now we're definitely going to get back to comics, because knowing number 3 was somebody you had earlier. Mine 3 is Harvey Dent, and a lot of it becomes from the earlier stuff with him. And when I say earlier, I mean not necessarily in terms of release, but chronological. So I mentioned I'm a big fan of the depictions of everybody from Long Halloween and Dark Victory, et cetera, et cetera. Harvey Dent's backstory, I love it in those comics. You haven't read them, shoot. All right, I won't give it away, but we all know he becomes Two-Face. And the story of how it happens is pretty similar to stuff you've seen. The story of him becoming the villain is very different, though. And there's a lot more duality to him, and there's a lot more Harvey left, especially at the start, than other versions of him. So, yeah, he's one of my favorites. He is another one. I mentioned this with the Joker, that I'd have somebody else on here that has become overused. So they've done a lot of things with him, including plastic surgery, and now he's okay, and he's Harvey Dent again. But, oh wait, there's still something underneath there's a lot of different stuff. They've done pretty much everything. He's become a soap opera, which is sort of the negative part of it. But I love those versions of him. His storyline in No Man's Land, where he becomes creepy, actually No Man's Land into Gotham Central, where he's sort of the creepy stalker of Renee Montoya, who is gay and therefore definitely not interested in him. Not that I think she would be particularly interested in him anyway, because he's nutso, and she's a police officer. That makes things difficult. And yeah, I've always liked the character, and he's one of the few that I love the animated series version, Richard Mall. But I've always kind of preferred the comic series.
Yeah, I mean... And
read Long Halloween and we'll see. We'll talk.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things where... And it's funny because I'm just now looking... I wanted to look up Dark Victory. I actually do already have Long Halloween. So that's coming this October to the pull bag. Yeah, I didn't hear it at first in the animated series depiction. But once I saw the name, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. That's Bull from Night Court.
Yep.
What the hell? But it works so well. And yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to reading any of, the stuff.
No, I know, you just haven't. So, I mean,
I just haven't. Like, it's the whole point, the whole reason why this podcast even exists is because I wanted to get into reading comics, and I hadn't throughout my entire life as a child, kind of thing. So,
Not to mention, we've talked about it before, that comics don't make it easy.
No.
You've talked about wanting to go back to the start, and it's also why I recommend stuff like Long Halloween to you, because it's not the start of Batman, obviously, but it is the start for an awful lot of his supporting cast, including Harvey. It's a very early Batman. It was depicted as a sequel to Batman Year One from Frank Miller in the 80s, and Mark Waid kind of pitched it to Jeff Lowe, who would end up writing it. But Waid sort of gave him the idea of, hey, why don't we fill in, some of this stuff that nobody's ever explored, like Harvey Dent's backstory was touched on significantly earlier, but he was never really a character. And suddenly in Year One, he's pals with Commissioner Gordon and Bruce Wayne. Mm-hmm. So how did that happen? What happened to their friendship when Harvey Dent became Two-Face? Was he always Two-Face? Et cetera, et cetera. So, I don't know. I was enjoying the character.
Yeah, I enjoy the character too, and I am not going to move on from this until I mention not only Aaron Eckhart's performance of him in the Nolan film, in Dark Knight, but Lando Calrissian as Harvey Dent in Batman. I remember watching Batman '89 as a kid, and
I was sad he never got to do it. It sucks that he never got to go through it.
He never got to go through the change.
I'm not trying to bash Tommy Lee Jones. I don't necessarily agree with some of his ideas and some of the things he did to explore Two-Face. But I did also always want to see what Billy D. Williams would have done with the character instead. I was always curious about that. I was happy that Eckhart got to play him.
Yeah, Eckhart's version in the live-action film in The Dark Knight was a really... I would say that's the true comics version, whereas Richard Mull's animated series version is its own... Like, it's not really...
They're all different, and it's interesting to see that merged in... So Eckhart obviously took some inspiration, actually quite a bit, from Long Halloween, and Long Halloween takes some / gives some to the animated stuff. So it's sort of, that's one of the reasons I like it. It's sort of a merger of all the versions of a lot of these characters, because other ones took from it, and it took from them if they existed. So anyway.
Yep. Alrighty then. Oh God, I keep saying that. Son of a bitch.
Number 3, Ace Ventura.
Yes. Number 3, Ace Ventura, When Nature... Oh, wait, no, that movie doesn't exist. Number 3 for you, who is your...
Or the cartoon show. Yeah, 3 for me was Harvey Dent. Your 3.
Harvey Dent. Okay, my 3. Yeah, there we go. It's Batman.
Happy? Call me when it's important, and not before.
Specifically, and I know it's a comic podcast, I know people are going to be screaming at their listening devices when I say this, but honestly, specifically, the most exposure I've had to Batman is the films and the DCAU. So I'm going to more specifically talk about DCAU than anything else. I'll say this now. Outside of George Clooney, I liked all of the I liked Michael Keaton and I liked Val Kilmer. Now, I'm going to defend my Val Kilmer enjoyment simply because I feel that he was a better Bruce Wayne than he was Batman. And the reason why I say that is because of... You okay over there?
Yes, I'm alive.
There's lots of noise and background things.
Yeah, so somebody
Okay,
fluffy,
they're gone.
Somebody fluffy and adorable might have grabbed the USB cable to the microphone.
Oh, great. Well,
and it wasn't Harley.
Of course, it had to be Basil. So, I will defend my enjoyment of Val Kilmer only because I feel he's a better Bruce Wayne than Batman, and this is all Kevin Conroy's fault. Because Kevin Conroy established in his voice that Bruce Wayne and Batman are two very different sounding characters. And while Val Kilmer is an amazing actor, I feel that his Batman was just a little bit stale, where his Bruce Wayne was more Brucey than most of the other ones. But Kevin Conroy in the animated series as the voice of Batman, if anyone says that that's not their favorite animated voice or doesn't immediately recognize that that is the voice of Batman, you're crazier than the Joker. What he did
What happens
with
if they're younger, though?
Well, then they're just, their parents didn't teach them well enough. So, everything he did, even still today when he voices Batman, like he's the voice of Batman on Justice League Action. There's a clip, and I absolutely love it, of him and Superman interrogating Deadshot. And Superman's trying to be the bad cop, and Batman's trying to be the good cop. And Batman just kind of freaks Deadshot out because it's like, here, do you want a donut? It's chocolate. It's delicious. Yum. And he kind of does this weird eyebrow thing with his mask, and he's like, Deadshot's voiced by Christian Bale. Christian Bale. Not Christian Slater, damn it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's definitely not Christian Bale, anyway.
Yeah, no. Deadshot in that is voiced by Christian Slater, and he's like, what are you doing with your eye? Don't do that. Like, get him away from me. And Kevin Conroy is always going to be the one true animated Batman. I did like what Bruce Greenwood did with him. Batman in the comics, to kind of pull it back around, I like what Scott Snyder did with him. I like the mystery of the Court of Owls, and I like how he has to figure that all out. Death of the Family kind of brought him to the brink. Endgame was it kind of felt like Batman was just playing his own role. It didn't really feel like...
he's not necessarily the main character of Endgame.
Obviously.
It's hard to... I wouldn't necessarily say the Joker was either. I feel like they're all kind of...
mixed in.
It's very much an ensemble, more than some other Snyder's books.
Yeah. All right, number 2 for you, sir, for the Batman characters.
So my runner-up is another one I feel like is pretty obvious. Another guy who, in my favorite versions of him, is an equal, and it's Commissioner Gordon / Jim Gordon, James Gordon, whatever you want to call him. My favorite thing about the comics, just to sum up why I love the character, is the idea that was kind of established in year 1, and a lot of writers have gone with it, and that is that Gordon is a good enough cop that he is well aware of who is under the mask, but he chooses to be in the dark. It's offered to him more than once by Batman to show, hey, I'll show you who I am. Mm-hmm. And Gordon always refuses, essentially because it's easier this way for him, and he's able to keep working together with him. But he almost always makes it really clear he knows who is under it. I like that he's generally depicted as competent, unlike most of the poor Gotham police force. But again, that kind of goes back to, I love Gotham Central, one of my favorite series, and I know Jim Gordon's not commissioner in it. However, he casts a long shadow in it. But like Alfred, he's one of the few characters that gets to stand up and talk to Batman like an equal. There's not a lot of awe or reverence there. There's respect and friendship, but that's about it.
And there's nothing more poignant that shows that other than in, I want to say, Holiday Nights, at the end of the episode, where they meet up in the coffee shop.
I knew we were going to mention the series again. Anyway.
Of course. I'm not going to take away from it. I'm just saying, like, you just made a point about their friendship. Well, you know, other than normally them being on the roof of where the GCPD is and the signal is, how often do you see Batman and the Commissioner having coffee? Not very often. Like, it's not something that happens every day. You're right, though. They are real friends. And again, over the edge. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that episode.
And it's why I like the comics, too, is they're willing to play with the relationship more. So Over the Edge was great because we finally saw Jim Gordon realizes that in a lot of ways, Bruce Wayne has betrayed he's kind of betrayed him, and he loses it when he sees his daughter die.
Yeah.
Which is understandable. But it's one of the things I like in the comics, that they've also done some similar stuff where in a lot of ways Bruce Wayne / Batman has betrayed his trust, or he hasn't brought Jim in on things that he really should have.
Yeah.
And stuff like No Man's Land is an example. It's happened actually quite a bit. But yeah, it's just, I've always loved the character. And not only that, but he's really the archetype for about a billion other characters in comics. There's so many characters that you can say, well, he's got his Jim Gordon, or, you know, that's that character's Jim Gordon. From so many in the Marvel Universe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You mentioned reading Iron Man. I mean, Iron Man, one of his first Jim Gordons was Rhodey, who he eventually kind of completely took under the wing and would become War Machine. But for a while, he was the guy who was more on the straight and narrow. Yeah, he wasn't being the law, that sort of thing. And it seems like almost every major character has had somebody who is sort of a confidant on the inside. You know, Thor has had the Warriors 3, who were still revered and loved in Asgard when Thor wasn't. You know, he would get the boot from Odin because Odin was ticked at him for whatever, hanging out with the humans, generally being a jerk, whatever it was. But he always had the Warriors 3, who were still there for him to talk to, bounce ideas off of, and kind of update him on the ground level sort of stuff that's going on that he doesn't get to see. And Jim is that for Batman. He is, like Alfred, he's a confidant who is capable of standing up to him.
He's a confidant who's able to stand up to him, but it's also like two very different styles of crime fighting. Like Jim Gordon is, in most cases, he's the commissioner of the GCPD. He has to kind of follow the rules, or else he won't be the commissioner anymore. Whereas he can just, and he's done this several times in the animated series, where Batman has just been hiding in the shadows, and, you know, Bullock or Montoya or whoever will just walk away, and he'll say, so what do you think? Like, he automatically knows when Batman is there at times. And I think my favorite thing about Commissioner Gordon and Bruce Wayne Batman is the whole thing of when Batman disappears. Like, just the conversation is over, Even though the commissioner might still be talking, Batman's end of the conversation is over and he's gone. He turns around and he's like, where'd he go? Like, that's just one of my one of my more enjoyable kind of, I guess, quote-unquote bat gags is whenever Batman does disappear.
And you're two?
It's none other than the boy wonder himself, Mr. Dick Grayson.
Damian Wayne. Oh.
Hey, shut the hell up. Dick Grayson, the only reason why he's not my number one is because my number one is...
Because I would mock you endlessly.
No. My number one is actually two characters, so I've cheated a lot on this list, but it's one character that two people have played. Dick Grayson, basically raised by Batman, basically raised by Bruce Wayne. His parents were murdered. Or his whole family, I should say, not just his parents. His parents and his sister, I believe, or brother and the Flying Graysons, right? The whole circus thing and everything else. I love that origin of Dick Grayson. Coming from the circus, so he has natural ability to automatically become Robin and then later Nightwing, whether it's a blue mask or a red mask. Once again, Kyle Higgins, the man just writes amazing things. New 52 Nightwing, I read that entire arc, and absolutely, there were several moments in it where I was like, okay, whatever. That's mainly some of the art, not all of it, but the writing in general, the way that Kyle Higgins wrote it, because again, he is like us. He loved the animated series kind of thing, and the DCIU at large. So that's where my love of Nightwing comes in. I want to explore other Nightwing stories, whether it's blue or whatever, which most likely it will be, because it's the only time he's been in a red, suit, black and red suit is New 52. But his kind of final words at the end of that series just basically hit me like a ton of bricks. I just absolutely love it. And again, Lauren Lester as the voice of Dick Grayson Robin, Dick Grayson Nightwing in the DCAU. I mean, I actually have a clip of Lauren Lester saying one of Kyle Higgins' lines.
Now, I love s'mores as much as the next guy, but I'm fresh out of marshmallows. What do you say we call it a night? I
mean, the man is an amazing actor, giving voice to a really cool character that I absolutely love. If folks have not read Kyle Higgins' Nightwing The New Order, read it. It's a really cool, futuristic Dick Grayson story, and it's really fun. When he gets introduced into certain parts of the Batman Beyond comic universe, I absolutely love that.
The things I do for Gotham.
I was just going to add that you're definitely going to love Dark Victory, which is the sort of telling of Dick Grayson's origin. That's the sequel to Long Halloween.
Long Halloween, yep.
But it also shows sort of his training and his first little bit as Robin, and it's not, it's certainly not the introduction to the character or anything like that, but right. I don't know, it's just a good story that shows a lot of why someone like Bruce Wayne would choose to bring someone like Dick Grayson, someone especially who at the time is angry and grieving, would bring him into that world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like I say, it came out. No, good.
No, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
All right, I was gonna say it came out way after so many other Robin stories, but it still manages to make it feel fresh and new, and then intertwine it with a lot of what we saw in the previous story as well. I don't know. They're two of my favorites Batman stories, and I have quite a few of them. So
absolutely, and I love not just New 52 Nightwing, Dick Grayson himself. I absolutely loved when he became Batman. Like, Gates of Gotham is amazing. That is one of the quintessential Batman stories for anyone to be able to read, because that gives super in-depth history of the city. It tells a very cool story. again, I'm sure you have. If you haven't, you need to read Nightwing: The New Order. That is another one of those stories that is just really, really cool. I can't move on from number one without talking about, or at least mentioning, the animated series episode Old Wounds, because wow. Love that show. Alright, drum roll please. What is your number one favorite Batman character, sir?
I don't think there's a lot of discussion needed on this one, since we wouldn't be here. But my number one is Bruce Wayne. I mean...
Now you want to get nuts? Come on! Let's get nuts.
There's no series or anything else without him. I chose... I have a feeling you didn't. I chose not to differentiate Bruce Wayne and Batman. I certainly think there's definitely an argument to be made there for sure. But yeah, I chose to kind of combine them. I also chose to combine them because I was already ticked off. I left other people off the list. So it's funny, when we first started thinking about it, I've debated. I thought it was going to be funny and have a bunch of characters who were more than one, just so I could be lazy and only listing like 3 characters, and then take the rest of the day off and feel great about myself. But no, as I went on, I just got more ticked off at what I was leaving off. So anyway, Bruce Wayne's number one. I mean, there's not a lot to... He is one of the most quintessential comic book characters of all time. There are so many fewer comic book characters, period, if this character hadn't been invented.
Exactly.
The entire landscape of the whole industry would be completely different. In fact, film, television, and everything else would probably be different. So, it's pretty important. I can't say much negative. In terms of what I like about the comics, I mean, I talked about it before, that I feel like the comics version... the comics version can be overused, and I talked about it before in other podcasts, that there's this tendency to make him a god. He can see all, he knows all. If Batman has time to prepare, he could defeat Megatron. Just silly stuff like that. But there's so many other relationships I love about this character. I mentioned so many of them in this. I love his relationships with Selina Kyle. I love how he gets to treat and spar with verbally Alfred and Jim Gordon, etc., etc. And just, he is one of the greatest comic characters of all time. So I don't know how much more I can add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I know Superman was technically first in 1938 as far as the DC superhero things, but 1 year later in 1939, and we're in 2019 now, 80 years of Batman, and Superman has a huge history and characters, and maybe we'll do a top 10 Superman list.
If you're making if you're making your Mount Rushmore of comics, Superman and Batman have to be on it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
You don't have a choice. No sane human being is going to leave either of them off.
No. And I mean, there's a whole point to why they say the Holy Trinity, which is Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Like, that is, Marvel has Spider-Man, has Iron Man, X-Men, whatever. When you think of DC, who are the first 3 characters you think of? Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Most likely. For me on number one,
I came up with an idea for a podcast, by the way. The Mount Rushmore of comics.
That can be worked into an episode. The Comic Concierge Movie Revolt.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, Movie Revolt Dan has done several Mount Rushmore blog posts on the website, so sure, we can turn that into a podcast episode kind of thing.
And on Twitter, he's had a bunch of them,
Yeah, he does it all the time. So we'll get him in on that as well. My number one actually ties, since you mentioned it, and since he is technically the father of all of these characters. This character has been played by 3 different people, in almost 4, but 3 main people. My number one is Batman Beyond. Bruce Wayne, Terry McGinnis, and Tim Drake. Now, the only reason why I say Tim Drake is because of the Dan Jurgens Tim Drake run in 2015, when Tim was hurled into the future and he had to become Batman because Terry either died or was somewhere or whatever. But let's face it, Bruce Wayne was the original Batman / Batman Beyond. Once again, Kevin Conroy, there is no other person that could stand in the Batcave and say,
never again.
because Bruce is finally driven to almost using a gun, something he said he would never do.
Was.
So he gives it up. Oh, stop it.
Real
so he
vigilant.
gives.
He's used gun. Oh, anyway, sorry.
All right, Mr. Punisher there. So he gives it up, and then, years later, Terry McGinnis, basically stumbles into the Batcave, steals the Batsuit, and goes on a joyride. And I love everything recently that DC and the creative have been doing over the last 5-6 years with Batman Beyond and Terry McGinnis. Again, Kyle Higgins, he had a run on it and did an amazing job with it. My very first Batman Beyond comic I read was written by Adam Beecham, and art was done by the late, great Norm Brayfogle in Batman Beyond 10,000 Clowns. Absolutely love that. That was the very first Batman Beyond episode we did here inside the Pull Bag. What Dan Jurgens is doing currently, what he has been doing for the last 4 years, there is no, other than what the animated series did. I love the stories that Jurgens has been telling with Batman Beyond. And, I mean, Terry McGinnis, they kind of mirrored him against Bruce Wayne as far as, his father getting murdered and all of that and everything else. And, of course, it kind of all goes back to Amanda Waller, the world can't exist without a Batman.
Yeah, they famously botched Terry / Batman Beyond's first appearance in the comics when they accidentally called him Tim.
True.
Which was a mistake that it was rumored they were going to correct it for the trade. If I remember correctly, they failed to do so. And so people just kind of started running with it, leading to, I think there was a figure produced that was called Tim on the back instead of Terry, and I think that's one of the reasons they kind of did the retcon thing, that Terry was missing / out of time. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. I'm still trying to figure out, man, we're going to have to set some ground rules for the Mount Rushmore.
Oh, of course we are, yeah. I'll leave that up to you.
My best idea so far has been Batman, Superman, Stan Lee, and then I got to figure out more. Anyway.
So that's our Batman characters. Did you have anything you wanted to say about Terry McGinnis or Tim Drake or any of that for Batman Beyond?
No, I've talked enough about the animated shows. People already know, though, that I absolutely adore Batman Beyond. I loved Terry McGinnis. I already had Tim Drake on my list. Right. And again, if Bruce Wayne as a character doesn't exist, we're not talking about any others. Also, True. I mean, he is... When they don't give him the kind of godlike powers, which to me makes him boring, the Bruce Wayne as a character is still really intriguing. And it's fun to see writers still able to do new things. We talked about it a bit on the Tom King run, where it starts off with, because he's suddenly thrust back into a world and reminded of all these people with superpowers, Batman feels antiquated and not he doesn't feel useful, or he doesn't feel like he's not himself.
Right.
And it's fun that writers can still kind of, that's been tried before, admittedly, but not in the same way that King does it. And it's nice that you mentioned 80 years, thousands of comic books at this point.
Yeah.
Movies, animated shows, TV shows, novels, you name it, it exists. And writers are still scrambling and coming up with new wrinkles on the character. I feel like it's a sign that the character is a good character if, 80 years later you can still do things with him.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And not get Simpsons did it syndrome or,
Yeah, true. All right, so I think that's going to do it for us. I mentioned next week, because next week's episode is already recorded. In June, we've got Superior Iron Man Volume 2. JT and I finally returned to that series after 4 years. I believe JT, Ryan, and I will be all joining forces to talk about the Self-Made Man in Dan Slott's Tony Stark Iron Man Volume 1. Movie Revolt Dan will be back for I Hate Fairyland's finale in Volume 4. We'll get back to TMNT, and then somebody, Ryan or JT or somebody, will be with me for Transformers Bumblebee, the movie prequel. No, I have not watched the film yet.
Watch the movie.
Yes, watch the movie. So that's what's coming up in June. In July, we've got a whole bunch of other stuff as well. We've got episode 360 will be the IDW 2020 episode. So that's going to be cool. Ryan's idea of Mount Rushmore, that'll be incorporated somewhere once
man, why do I come up with these?
Well, it's your fault. You say something on a recording. I'm not editing this out. So we hope everyone enjoyed Batman Month this year. Slightly different, and I try to keep it slightly different each year. Obviously, because JT and I are still reading through the Batman Beyond Rebirth series, we still have to cover that, but I mean, you and I did a Dark Knight, a True Batman story, the Paul Dini book. Then we, did the New 52 and then the Rebirth stuff and first part of Stephanie Brown's Batgirl as well. So, always.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that too, with regards to Batman and it being 80 years. That again, something like a Batman story comes out and it's completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. Very much so. Where can the people find you online, sir?
At Nightbeat on Twitter.
Absolutely. I am at TFG and Mike. You can follow at The Pullbag and at Geekcast Radio for all the other network updates on Twitter. Check us out on Facebook as well. Make your greatest game to comics and join us as we become superior next time around in episode 355 with JT from Saskatoon and myself. Make your greatest game in the comics, and we will catch you next time.
Welcome to my world.
What? Shut up! Shut up! I'm not hearing this! Well, there you have it, folks. The first top 10 list here inside the pull bag. Harley! Harley! Get my agent on the phone. We have some splaining to do with these guys. After all, it just takes one bad day.
You've just heard the latest episode of The Pullbag, the GCRN's first comic review and discussion podcast. There are several ways to get in touch with us and leave feedback for the show. You can visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. You can rate and leave a review for the show on iTunes. Be sure to leave us feedback. Become a fan of us on Facebook, facebook.com/thepullbag. Send us an email, feedback at geekcastradio.com. Follow us on Twitter at thepullbag and at geekcastradio. So until next time, make your great escape into comics and unleash the geek in you.